Hey, welcome to episode 203 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. And I earlier in life, I never thought I would be a podcast host. Actually, until a few years ago, I never thought that. Like with a speech impediment and all, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But life can carry us in very exciting directions sometimes. And then also life sometimes delivers very bad news of all sorts sometimes. And you can think of all kinds of bad news that you could receive, or that a loved one could receive. But one type of bad news is going into the doctor, and after they run some tests, and the doctor going, you need to sit down. We need to have a conversation. The test results came back, and that is just going to be very, very different for you, at least in the near future. When we get bad news like this, there's two options that we have. One option is getting letting the bad news define the rest of our lives and make us miserable for the rest of our lives and reduce who we are. The other option is to hear the bad news, go through shock and denial, but then to say, oh, what can I do now with this? I mention all this because my guest today, she's chosen the second path, and she's wise, she's inspiring, she's full of joy. And without further ado, let me tell you more about my guest today. But first, this.
Today's guest, Jennifer Gasner.
To Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Jennifer Gasner, my guest today, has led a very unexpected life. At 17, she was diagnosed with Friedreich's Ataxia, a rare progressive neuromuscular disease. To navigate the world, she would need to use a walker and eventually a wheelchair. Her determination and sense of humor have helped her defy the expectations that often come with having a disability. As she is an author and an advocate with a powerful perspective of moving through the challenges life brings. Jennifer's best-selling memoir, My Unexpected Life, Finding Balance Beyond My Diagnosis, was published in 2023. Since then, it's been richly celebrated, being awarded a Literary Titan Gold Book Award, winning a red ribbon from the Wishing Shelf Book Awards, and being named Nonfiction Book of the Year by the Chrysalis BREW Project. Project. Jennifer Gasner, my guest today, but first, this. Today's guest, Jennifer Gasner, my guest today, has led a very unexpected life. At 17, she was diagnosed with Friedreich's Ataxia, a rare progressive neuromuscular disease. To navigate the world, she would need to use a walker and eventually a wheelchair. Her determination and sense of humor have helped her defy the expectations that often come with having a disability. As Jennifer is a proud member of the San Diego Memoir Writers Association, where she was member of the month in September 2023. And I need to take a breath. She has a long bio. Her writing has been published in Shaking the Tree, volumes 3 and 4, and 6 feet apart in the time of Corona. She was author of the month for April 2024 at the San Diego Central Library. Oh, that brilliance, that's awesome. And I have to take a breath, but not too long because I'm pleased to welcome Jennifer Gasner to our Really Awesome Podcast. Woo!
Thank you, Jason. That was awesome.
Actually, to be technical, Jennifer, awkwardly awesome.
Awkwardly awesome. You're right.
So where did you grow up as a kid?
As a kid, I grew up in northeastern Wisconsin, about 45 minutes south of Green Bay. That's why I'm a Packers fan.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not really and 10 being like a huge fan, where are you?
I would probably say I'm at a 7 or 8. I know some of the history, but not as much as most people, I'm sure.
Have you been to a game at Lambeau Field?
I have. I was lucky enough to have gone to 3 games before.
I have to know, did you wear a cheese head?
I haven't. No. I should though.
I've heard if you wear a cheese head, you that bumps you up to a 9.
Perhaps.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as a kid, what did you like to do?
I was a klutz, but I loved to do things like tumbling and cartwheels. I hated running. I've always hated running. But I loved like figure skating and things that probably required too much balance that I never really had.
But you still you loved them, and so you did them, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So
And I've played piano. I've always been a big music person.
what do you love about playing piano?
I just always loved the way it sounded, and it was, at the time, it was a creative outlet for me that I hadn't really, or that I was able to find and actually enjoyed.
Did you have some really good piano teachers?
I did. Actually, my only teacher was very good, and he was well known in the community I grew up in.
So when I was young, I was very impatient, Jennifer. And often I would try things, and if I couldn't do them well right away, I would throw up my hands and say, "This isn't for me."
Yeah.
What do you think gave you patience with like tumbling and?
That's a good question. I think it was just that I got encouragement to keep trying, and I think, I mean, I was in what, third grade, I think, second grade, when I started taking piano, and I think I understood it was a learning process, and I was going to have to go through certain steps in order to get where I felt a little more comfortable.
That is very wise for a young person.
I
I was
know.
just very impatient. If I had asked you at age 7 what you wanted to do when you grew up, what would you have said?
At age 7, I probably would have said a teacher, because I think that was, first of all, that was probably the only thing I really understood that people did, you know, uh, beyond what my parents did, which didn't seem to me very joyful. It was just like a job.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, but that's probably it.
If I had asked you at that age what you wanted to teach, what would you have said?
I probably would have said little kids,
Hmm.
which is interesting because now I just think that job is really difficult.
It would take a lot of energy, to lot of energy.
Yeah,
Be really fun, but yeah, yeah.
yeah. Especially like right now, because I think uh, the majority of kids who are, say, 7, 6, 7, 8 right now, they spent their early years when socializing is a big part of their development during the pandemic.
Oh gosh, that's such
You
a good
know,
point.
so I think that has really affected them.
Such a good point. How did the dream of being on radio come to you?
It really was something that I thought in the back of my mind, oh, like, I wonder how people get to do that. I, of course, listen to the radio, or I'd see somebody on TV, and I'd think, oh, maybe I could make a career out of that. And then one of my friends in high school was really integral into me understanding, like, I could do this as a career and going to college radio. for some reason that really appealed to me.
In high school, did you do any extracurriculars like sports?
I was on the yearbook staff for, I think, 3 years. And we built the homecoming float at my house every year.
Fun.
And I was a mat maiden.
You were what?
A mat maiden, which is what they called like the scorekeepers for the wrestling team.
Oh, Mad Maiden.
Yeah.
It took me a minute to figure out what that was.
I know. So, yeah.
How big of a town do you come from?
So I come from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is about, well, at the time I lived there, there were about 35,000 people. Now I'm sure it's more, but
Oh, so for a sec I was getting this image of you living in a small town, but 30,000, you don't know everybody. What
no,
is
no.
there one or two high schools in your city?
There are 3, and
Wow.
I went to the smallest one. So there's a public school, a Catholic school, and I went to the Lutheran high school, and that was 200 students.
Oh, wow. I mean, for a private high school, that's a pretty big class.
Yeah. Well, that was in the whole school. There were only 54 people in my class.
Nice. What did you go to the school for grade school too?
I went to a Lutheran grade school, and that was even smaller. There were 2 grades in every classroom, and we had 13 people in our class.
So 13 people for 2 grades.
No, there were probably 26, 25 people, but our grade was 13, so half
Nice.
of that.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of going to a small school from your perspective?
Well, our school, the one disadvantage was we didn't have a gym. So we generally practiced at the high school, like in terms of the basketball team or whatever it was. So physical education wasn't that important, but it was kind of interesting because we had 2 classes in the room. There would be one time where the teacher would teach, say, the 7th graders, and then the other time they would teach the 8th graders. So it was a good learning experience in doing your homework while there was other stuff going on. You know, kind of learning how to focus in on something.
And then as a little grade, you would always be hearing what was coming up next year. And as an upper grade, you will be hearing, you will be reviewing essentially what you had last year. That's
Right.
really interesting.
Yeah.
So, at age, I realize that I don't know how to make this transition, so I'm just going to make it. But at age 17, how did you know that you wanted to go into, wanted probably is a strong word, that it was time to go into the doctor?
Oh, well, I had, like I said before, I had been a klutz almost all of my life. And then probably starting around age 15, I really started to notice falling a lot more. And I had tried to do a cartwheel at one point, and it was really bad. I felt really discombobulated, and I grew up, I was very proud of my cartwheel. I thought I did an excellent cartwheel, and then to try it and not be able to do it was really weird. So some of these things had kept happening, and at one point, I was walking to my mom's car, and I just realized walking in a straight line was becoming difficult, and I almost fell. So that was when I went, something's going on here.
So then then what happened once you went in to see the doctor?
Well, I went to the pediatrician first, who then recommended I go see the local neurologist. And we went there and had some pretty excruciating tests. And he was not a very nice man. So we went to get a second opinion.
And what was that like getting the second opinion?
It was really different for a lot of reasons. It was very similar in that a lot of the tests were just like the ones the first doctor had done, but this doctor also went a little further and deeper in talking to me, directly to me, instead of talking to my mom. And he was extremely compassionate, which the other doctor was not. So, and it was in some ways it was scary, just because I kind of already had this idea of what was going to happen because of the first doctor. But the way the tests and everything went was totally the opposite. It was in some ways a much more pleasant experience.
It sounds like the second doctor was, would you use the word that he was kind?
He was kind yet and compassionate.
So after the testing, did he give you did he give you a diagnosis?
He did. It took him a few weeks, and he actually called my mother and told her the diagnosis. I didn't talk to him personally, but he told my mother.
Had you ever heard of Friedreich's ataxia? Ataxia.
Never. The only thing that gave me a little bit of context was that it was a form of muscular dystrophy, which at the time I didn't relate to at all because I was still walking independently. I didn't think I was going to use a wheelchair or anything like that.
So at first, it sounds like it was almost like it was a sunny sky and there's a forecast of a storm like 3 counties away, and you're like, what? It's a sunny day here.
Yeah, and I just didn't think that was ever going to be me until I watched the Labor Day telethon. Grant, this was 1990. So, for anyone who doesn't know, that Jerry Lewis did a telethon every year on Labor Day, and it was for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And I saw one person on there, and they introduced him, and he was a wheelchair user. And they said he has Friedreich's ataxia. And I just was like, what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had no idea.
So after that moment, what happened next? After you had the realization, what happened next for you?
My mother worked at one of the local hospitals, and had looked up Friedreich's ataxia in a medical dictionary, and came home with it and told me to read only the highlighted parts, Which, of course, as a 17-year-old girl, I did exactly what my mother told me not to do. And I read the whole thing, and it talked about using a wheelchair by 21, and then dying by 25, which devastated me even more.
So it really sunk in when you read the whole thing, not just the highlighted parts.
Yes.
So Jennifer, yeah, I know I've a friend introduced us, and we've talked once before, and I worked on your bio and description and stuff. But what I know of you is a extremely humorous person. You're happy. There's a sense of joy within you. You take risks. You're you're writing books. So how did you go from the devastation of reading the whole description to where you are now?
Well, two things. First of all, my neurologist, the one who gave me the second opinion,
The second neurologist.
yeah, he told me that I shouldn't let the diagnosis affect my life. And that even though I read all these things about, the wheelchair at 21 and dying at 25, that wasn't necessarily the case. Like, because Friedreich's ataxia is different in almost every person who has it. Excuse me. So, as long as I didn't develop heart issues, which I haven't, I shouldn't be too concerned about that. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was I went to a support group for adults with muscular dystrophy, and they were all very negative and very down and kind of bitter about everything. And I said to my parents afterward, I was like, I do not want to live that way. I don't want to live my life, and end up being really sad and depressed. That seemed really not like a good way to live.
So the first thing your second neurologist gave you such great advice, especially like nowadays. Like in the 90s, your mom gave you a highlighted piece of paper, but nowadays, someone who gets a diagnosis has the whole wide web to search endlessly and go down rabbit holes, and some information's good, some's not. But the idea when we get a diagnosis that we don't know for sure what the progression will be, and it seems like a great idea that gives us a lot of freedom.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and it gives. I am thankful that I wasn't diagnosed within the internet age, because I think it would have been far easier for me to go down that rabbit hole. But I don't know, there are pros and cons to it, but I'm not even exactly sure if I answered your question. I got lost in thought.
It seemed like you were going to say, but there's some benefits of having the internet.
Yeah, yeah, for
What
sure.
would those benefits be?
Uh, so there's an organization called the Friedrich's Ataxia Research Alliance, or FARA, FARA, that started, I believe, in 99. I just got involved with them like 4 years ago. And they've really developed a strong community around Friedrich's ataxia and around rare disease. And that's something I never had when I was in high school and college. You know, there was very little information.
When did you first meet someone else who had Friedreich's ataxia?
I actually met a girl in college who had it, but unfortunately she dropped out. And then I didn't meet anyone else who had it until I was 30, and living here in San Diego.
So that's like 13 years
Yeah,
of having
nothing. Yeah.
what has been the benefits of being able to talk to other people who have Friedreich's ataxia?
Well, it's really nice to know that there are other people who have felt what you feel or know what you're going through and things like that. And it's I don't know, it's just been a very good community for me to be involved in, I feel.
Nice. So as I said at the beginning, a lot of us are going to. I mean, life just comes with times when we as people get really bad news. Um, if you could go back to and talk to the Jennifer you were who was reading not only the highlighted part but between the lines as it were, what would you say to her about dealing with bad news and moving forward?
Well, I think it's a lot of what you were saying, like you're at a fork and you have a choice of which way you go. You can dwell on it or you can pick yourself up and move forward.
Yeah, what would you say to someone listening who's like, I hear you, Jennifer, I hear you, but some days it's so hard to pick myself up?
Well, I think it's important to realize, like, first of all, disability is not a bad word. And so, and also to realize that it's a part of you, it doesn't have to be all of you. Of
It's a
course,
part of you, it doesn't have to be all of you.
right? Of course, it bleeds into many parts of you, but it doesn't have to be your entire identity. Like, you're still able and worthy to live a life full of love and purpose, and have it be a fulfilling life.
You're still able and worthy to live a life full of love and purpose and have it be a fulfilling life.
Yeah,
I mean, those words, how you said them, are really wonderful. Really wonderful.
I hope so. Thank you.
And it's also a great segue. I mean, how you said those words, it sounds like, and this is going to be a cheesy segue too, but how you said those words, it sounds like you might be a writer, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Tell me about what do you love about being a writer or being an accomplished writer?
I like it because I found writing to be very cathartic and healing for me. If I'm honest, initially I started out thinking I wanted people to see the ugly side of what was going on in my family, or just in my world. And by the end of it, I was like, I don't necessarily need everyone to know that. I have a little more compassion for what I went through, as well as what my parents went through, and a little more understanding of this is what happened when I was young, and it's kind of embarrassing, but it's what happened.
For someone who I'm a writer, but for someone who doesn't write much at all, whose main association with writing is English class and in high school or college, how would you describe to that person how writing can be healing and cathartic?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be asking it instead of trying to answer it.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Sure, no problem.
Boy, I don't know. I guess there's something about getting things out on a written somewhere on a page and being able to read them. Somehow that transforms them into something else, or it helps you get rid of some sort of emotion, like because you're getting it out of your head instead of, dwelling, I guess.
It's really well said. Like you're physically releasing it, and also you're seeing it as separate from you on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And memoir writing is a particular focus of yours. What do you like about memoir?
Well, I think all the same reasons. I think it is cathartic, gives you some perspective about what's going on, and for me, I think it's a little easier to write, although I'm trying to come up with some fiction at some point. But yeah, I think sometimes it can be a little easier to write, just in terms of your own knowledge, but you also have to go pretty deep into it.
So it's easy in one sense, maybe, but it can be very challenging in another sense.
Yeah.
So some of what people write about is big shifts they decide to make in life. So you were going along, and at age 28, you decided 28, right? You decided to move out to San Diego.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, how old were you when you just? I could have just asked how old you were when you moved to San Diego.
Yeah, I was almost 28.
So how did how were you getting around at that age?
Well, I had started using a wheelchair about 2 years prior, and I spent my first winter in Wisconsin using a power wheelchair, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
Please briefly describe what winter using a wheelchair is like.
Well, using a power chair was mainly, it was almost like getting rained on, because the snow would hit your lap and, melt. That was part of it. And then the other part was the snow would get like stuck and lodged in between my wheels, and I would get stuck a lot. So you're getting wet and cold and stuck.
So you realize that was something you really didn't enjoy, using an electric wheelchair in the winter. But
Correct.
still, you had lived in Wisconsin all your life, right?
Yes.
So I mean, sometimes as humans, we try to make do with things that are really uncomfortable. What pushed you beyond making do to say, hey, to think, hey, I want out of winter. I'm going to move to San Diego.
Well, several things happened at once. So I was working for the state organization for independent living centers, and that job was funded by a grant. So I was the grant was ending, and I was losing that job. Anyway, so I knew I had something. And I had always wanted to live in California, to not have to deal with snow. And I had a friend who lived here, and she and her husband said I could come live with them until I found a job. And she was a wheelchair user as well, so it seemed perfect.
If a wheelchair user is listening and wanting to make a move across country, what should they consider?
Well, I think you have to consider the cost of living where you're moving to. If you're going to be employed, where, or how, whatever, what you think you might want to do. But I also think you have to think about accessibility, obviously. Like, is there healthcare you can get, and how are maybe the state benefits? Like, if you need in-home supportive services or things like that, and in order to live here and not always rely on your usual support system. And I think you have to be open to finding and creating your own system here. It definitely can happen.
Did you start making those connections with services while you were in Wisconsin, or once you got to San Diego?
A little bit of both. At the time, I was relatively independent. I was able to transfer, get myself dressed, take care of all the activities of daily living, all that stuff. So I didn't really feel like I needed those services, though I knew at some point I would. So, but I did look into different things like how my social security would be affected and, things like that.
Are you glad you made the move?
Very. Yeah, I've been here. So now it's been 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And like one of the things when I moved here, I decided I was going to sign up for Section 8 housing, which I believe at the time they were like, oh, it's a 7-year waiting list.
A 7-year waiting list.
Yeah.
Holy.
And so my name finally came up in 2010, but I had just bought a condo during the crash. So I couldn't use it at that point. But yeah, I mean, there are things like that. Even if you don't think you need it right away, at least get on the waiting list.
Yeah. 7-year waiting list, so apply as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Holy man. So we just have a few more minutes. It's been fascinating talking with you. What else do you want to tell people? What haven't I asked that should be celebrated, that people should know?
Well, I think we touched on it a little earlier. Like, if anyone is newly diagnosed or injured, I really want people to understand that they're still worthy and, they're still capable. And it's okay to, go through the stages and not understand everything. When I first learned about the independent living movement, I had no clue it existed or anything. And I think that's true for most people with disabilities.
We talked about looking on the internet before and kind of the pros and cons, but where's somewhere someone could start like getting a sense of what services might be available?
I would say pretty much every county should have coverage of an independent living center or center for independent living. Maybe not an actual physical office in each county, but at least try to research different centers for independent living in your state and hopefully, if they're doing their job, well, they'll have some good resources and some good workshops on developing independent living skills and things like that.
So a good place to start is Grueling Center for Independent Living and put your county by it.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, it's been it's been great talking with you, Jennifer. How can people find your books?
So my book is available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. It's pretty much going to be available in anywhere that sells books. It's probably not going to be on the shelf, but any bookstore can probably order it. And you can find me on Instagram at Jenny J. Writer, or Facebook, Jennifer Gasner Author, or my website, jennifergasner.com. And if you sign up for my mailing list, you get the link to the playlist for the book. Because I reference a lot of music.
What?
I reference a lot of music.
That's wonderful. You have a playlist for the book too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on and for sharing your wisdom and incredible story.
Well, thank you for having me, Jason. This has been awkwardly awesome.
Yes. I love talking to just phenomenal people. Jennifer Gasner is a phenomenal person. I learned so much from talking with her, and I was inspired, and I hope you learned a lot too. And just remember, yes, tough things will probably come our way in life, but they don't have to make the rest of our life miserable. When tough things come our way, we are free to just decide how we respond. And there's so many options for navigating tough things, and together we can keep going and keep inspiring each other. Please tune in next week for another great but I'll have a conversation with another great guest. And until then, remember